Hey, what's going on? Posido here. Today I want to talk about warm-up exercises for the bass. These are my go-to exercises when I've been away from my instrument for quite some time. Let's get started. Okay, so there's many ways to approach warming up on the bass. For me, when I haven't been by my instrument in quite some time, I need to get my ears, my mind, and my hands to all work together in sync. Actually, when all three of those things work together in sync, your speed and your dexterity will naturally follow, okay? So I tend to not really use these types of exercises where it's like one finger per fret, because while they're really good for your fingers, they don't really do anything for your ears or your mind. At least for me, it doesn't. Here's the first exercise that I like to do, or the first type of warm-up that I like to do. I first start out with just a series of double stops. It could be any scale, so it's not just a major scale. I do this with other scales too as well, but I'll just do this for instance, a G major scale just to demonstrate. And this is just going to help me map out the fretboard. This will also help me get the sound of G major into my ears. But then I take it a next step. What I'm going to do is I'm going to play a series of, or I'm going to precede each of these, these double stops with the 5 chord built before it, okay? And the shape that I'm going to use is just a tritone. So this is the tritone, but I'm going to bring the tritone up an octave, okay? So this is almost like a diminished shape, so to speak. So it sounds like this. I start out with my G, then I'm going to target my 2 chord, target my 3 chord, target my 4 chord, target my 5 chord, target my 6 chord, target my 7, target my 1. Okay, and then when I go back down, I'm going to do the same exact thing, and you'll notice that when I'm targeting it, it's, I'm playing it from a half step below. So 1, target my 7, target my 6, target my 5, target my 4, target my 3, target my 2, target my 1. Okay, so this is basically 5 of 1, 5 of 2, 5 of 3, 5 of 4, 5 of 5. And this is a great exercise because, I got this thing going on with my hands. So it stretches out my fingers. Mentally, I have to map out the fretboard. I have to see the fretboard. I have to see these shapes on the fretboard. So it's warming up my mind. And then from an ear perspective, I'm hearing that resolution, that 5-2-1 cadence that I'm creating here. So here we go. 5 to the 2 chord, 5 to the 3 chord, 5 to the 4 chord, 5 to the 5, 5 to the 6. Okay, this exercise, I actually wrote this on my own, but it actually was inspired by Jocko's version of Blackbird. He did, okay, this shape right here, I was like, wait a second. These are just basically, while it's chromatic, it's basically 5 ofs if you think about it that way. So I created an exercise about that. You do this with every single type of scale that you know. It's going to really help you map out the fretboard. It's going to get the sound of the scale in your ears, and you're going to hear these cool, 5-5-2 tonic relationships. The next exercise that works really well for just kind of getting your fingers in sync, your ears in sync too, as well as what I call the reverse shuffle rhythm, basically. It's a rhythm that I hear a lot of sax players and horn players do when they're practicing their lines, any scale lines or even just phrases. So it's a 16th note followed by a dotted 8th note. Okay, so the rhythm is basically, or, okay, you can do it almost like this. Basically, that staggered rhythm basically is a really quick way to get your fingers to start working in sync. Okay, so I'm going to play this over a G major scale, and you'll hear how it sounds. So just in a 1 octave scale, it sounds like this. Okay, now when I play this spanning a couple octaves, what's going to happen is, because of this staggered rhythm, there's going to be some parts where I'm shifting, where I might flub, or I might find out that I'm not able to play it as fast as I would like. These are troublesome areas or transitional areas that I need to focus on when it comes to practice. But from a warm-up perspective, it's going to really start kind of forcing my hands to work in sync by just playing in rhythm. So it goes like this. Okay, so this is a great exercise to do again with any phrase that you do. Even if the phrase that you're trying to learn, for instance, has a different rhythm, try using this specific rhythm with the notes of that phrase that you're learning, and it's going to really start syncing up your fingers. It's also going to help you, hear certain things, like rhythmically they're resolving in weird areas. And then also just mentally, you're going to have to really think a little bit, because that staggered rhythm is staying consistent while your hands are moving. But that's a really good exercise. The next exercise that I really like, it's a warm-up exercise that I call the tornado exercise. And this is a warm-up that I wrote when I just became a new parent. Basically, when I became a new parent, I barely had time to touch my instrument, and that was very frustrating. So I needed a type of warm-up or an exercise that kind of synced my mind, my ears, and my hands all together. Okay, so the way the tornado exercise works, it's a series of minor 2/5s. Okay, so I have, for instance, D minor 7 flat 5 going to a G altered 7, and then it's just going to move down chromatically in half steps. So I have 2/5, 2/5, 2/5, 2/5, just going down in half steps. Now, the way this exercise works is it's a series of broken thirds or broken third intervals. That type of interval is a great interval, or just broken intervals in general are great for string crossing. Whenever you're crossing strings on the bass, it's really easy to get clumsy, and it's really actually harder than it seems to play very clean. So I highly encourage, whenever you're doing any sort of exercise, if there's string crossing in it, that's really good, because it's going to really help you kind of get your fingers in sync, but also help you with certain stretches and just crossing in general. So you have string crossing involved. We're also going to play the third, or start the notes or the phrases on the third of each chord. So for my 2 chord, for my D minor 7 flat 5, I'm going to start on the third, which is an F, and for my G altered 7, I'm going to start on the third, which is a B. Okay. Now, whenever I start phrases, or whenever you try this and you start phrases that are not on the root note, that's going to be a really good exercise, or a good warm-up for just getting your mind to kind of map out your fretboard. When you first start out, you're going to be constantly looking at the root note and then shifting up to the third and then starting there. At some point, you not only hear that third, but you'll also start to see it as well in your fretboard. You'll map that out pretty quickly, where the third is. Okay, and then the next part, what I really like about this exercise, is that there's built-in voice leading. So the 2 chord, the phrase will end on the 7th of the 2 chord, and that resolves to the 3rd of the 5 chord. Okay, and this resolution of 7 to 3, 7 to 3, 7 to 3 is a common way of voice leading, whether it's in chords or in melodic lines. You'll hear this all over the place in jazz and in just other styles of music in general. So as an exercise, or even as a warm-up, it's good to incorporate voice leading into your exercises, because that's going to be something that you can actually use in a live situation. Okay, so for my D minor 7 flat 5, the phrase sounds like this. I'm going to start on the third, which is F, and we'll play broken thirds. Okay, and I'm ending on the 7th of that. That's going to resolve to the 3rd for my G7. That's B right there. Broken thirds again. And you can hear this is a 2/5 that will resolve very nicely to C minor, right? To my tonic chord. Okay, except for the exercise or the warm-up, we're not gonna play the tonic. Okay, so this is what it sounds like together, just real quick. Okay. That's the main phrase. Now, if you want to see the notes or the tablature for this phrase, I'll put a link in the description below, and you can download that there. Now, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to play the same exact phrase, and I'm just going to go down in half steps, and it's going to naturally voice lead every single time I'm changing keys, or every time I go down in half steps. It's always going to go 7 to 3, 7 to 3, 7 to 3. So this is a really good exercise for your ears. And I'm just going to do this for a couple keys so you can hear what it'll sound like, but the actual exercise travels along your entire fretboard on all 12 keys. That's the basic idea of the exercise. I call it the tornado exercise because it makes your fingers cross a lot of strings, and it's really good for your ears, good for your hands. Basically, just all these things are working at the same time. All right. So those are my go-to exercises or my go-to warm-ups for the bass guitar. I really hope you enjoyed this. I hope you got something out of it. If you did, please like this video, subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you next time. Okay, so there's many different approaches. Okay, so there's many different approaches for how to